Thank you for joining us. My family and I started Bring Change to Mind 10 years ago to end the stigma and discrimination surrounding mental illness. Our mission was simple: to start the conversation. We've worked to promote open conversation ever since. From depression to bipolar disorder to post-traumatic stress, mental illness affects 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 5 children. We simply need to talk about it, dispel ignorant, destructive myths, and create empathy. Too many people are afraid to seek help. Bring Change to Mind creates safe and stigma-free peer-to-peer high school clubs where students learn about mental health, to listen and support each other, and are given the tools for self-care and wellness. Over the coming weeks and months, students will be reintegrating with their peers and returning to campuses for the first time in 14 months. We can help them and ourselves by listening without judgment, by starting and continuing courageous, supportive conversations in our home and with our friends. Tonight's discussion is an opportunity to address how mental health intersects with other critical issues that face our society. You will hear authentic and candid conversations. Our goal is to show that everyone deals in one way or another with mental health because we're human. My family and I have learned that where there is conversation, there is hope. For being with us tonight, thank you.
Hey everyone, my name's Dan Wakeford. I'm the editor-in-chief of the People brand. I take mental health very seriously, and it's a very important subject to me. It's the central cause that I've chosen for People magazine over the last 2 years, as I believe mental health and mental illness affects everyone's lives. And if you don't struggle, you know somebody who does. So we have a campaign, Let's Talk About It, where we get notable figures and regular folks to talk about the mental health with the aim to destigmatize it and provide resources to people. And I think it's particularly important that notable figures talk about their mental health, because with social media and magazines, everybody thinks that they live very shiny and perfect lives. And when you scratch beneath the surface, I think we all have mental health issues, and you know people dealing with mental health issues or mental illness. So on behalf of People, I'm so happy to be here with you today, and with all you folks at home too. As we gather here during Mental Health Awareness Month with Bring Change to Mind, we're a national organisation working to open dialogue around mental health and build the awareness, understanding and the empathy that's necessary to inspire action, structural change and the creation of new norms. Now, every single human being has their own unique relationship to mental health, but the LGBTQIA community faces far more stigma and discrimination than our straight cisgender brothers and sisters. And today we're going to explore just that with this wonderful group of luminaries. First up, we have Wilson Cruz, who is an actor known for many roles, but he holds a special place in our hearts for playing Ricky Vasquez on My So-Called Life. This made him the first openly gay actor to play an openly gay character in a leading role in an American television series. So Wilson has served as an advocate for gay youth, especially gay youth of colour. So thank you today for contributing your knowledge and experience to the panel.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Next up, we have Roxane Gay, who's a phenomenal writer of books, television, film, newspaper columns, and of course, Twitter. Whilst reading up on what she's been up to lately, I discovered this delightful quote about her from a critic in The Guardian who said, "Gay has the voice of a friend you call first for advice."
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Next up, we have Gigi Gorgeous, who is a YouTube star, transgender activist, author, actress, TV star, and model. I'm not sure if there's anything this girl can't do. Gigi has her own feature-length documentary, This Is Everything, Gigi Gorgeous, which premiered at Sundance, and she was named one of Time magazine's 25 most influential people on the internet. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. And last but not least, Alec Mapa, described by many as America's Gaysian sweetheart, but described by Ellen DeGeneres as smart, hilarious, and funny. Alec is an accomplished comedian, appearing in many television and film roles and live comedy performances. Alec was awarded the prestigious Davidson Valentini GLAAD Award for promoting equal rights for the LGBT community, and has a fantastic podcast called Alex Mapa, Hot Mess with Matthew Dempsey, which explores mental health.
Hi.
And so thank you in advance, all of you, for sharing your experiences to help others. It's really appreciated. Now, a little bit about me. I'm a cisgender gay male, and I live with my husband, 2 cats, and a puppy named Misty Day. My journey as a gay man has involved many issues related to mental health, starting with being bullied at school for being different, which led to hiding my true feelings of my identity for many, many years, assimilating to my straight twin brother. And I only came out when I was 23 years old. Coming out was extremely difficult for me. I felt so much shame that I couldn't really imagine getting over that hurdle, as I thought I could lose everything and everyone. So after spending all of those years pushing my feelings aside and pretending to be somebody else, I think I've struggled with issues related to being in touch with my feelings and putting work before happiness. So I think that's enough about me for now. Over to you folks. While we're here to talk about LGBTQIA issues, we're of course open to talk about anything related to mental health, because it really truly intersects with many different issues, whether that's race, the pandemic, or the stresses of living in a digital world. So we're going to start off with a question related to coming out. Wilson, did you have any issues with coming out and mental health issues related to that?
Well, yes. I mean, just for background, I grew up like first generation born here in the States. Both of my parents, all of my grandparents were born in Puerto Rico, and were very influenced by the politics and culture in Puerto Rico, which means that there was a firm foot in the patriarchy, and anyone who did not bow to that thought and that cultural way of living, paid a price. And anyone who was other than the cisgender, straight, machismo male struggled to be seen. And I was definitely part of that. Growing up, I was Catholic. My father tried to get me to conform to the gender norms that he understood and expected his son to be defined by. So my coming out was traumatic. I got kicked out, and I had to find a way to survive. And a lot of that meant, being vulnerable enough to ask for help. And reaching out to not only my inner circle, my circle of my chosen family, but also trying to find resources within the community that were willing and able to support me at a really fragile time. I'd be honest by saying that it wasn't until the last few years that I could say I really healed from that trauma, or really got a handle on it and really understood it and looked at it and didn't deny what happened to it, and worked it through the ways in which it affected me negatively. I carried a lot of that shame around with me for a long time.
It really does affect you for decades and decades. Roxane, how about you?
I was, in many regards, very lucky. I came out I'm so old. I came out in 1992, and there were a lot of complications around my coming out, but my family, I thought it would repel them, and I thought that they would just disappear from my life and shut me out because they're Catholic and I too am first generation. And they were not thrilled. And my parents are deeply religious, or they were at the time, and very Haitian. And yet they did not turn their backs on me. And they welcomed anyone I ever brought home, even if they did so early on grudgingly. But over the years, we've had a lot of time for me to be able to educate them about what it means to be queer, and that there's no reason why faith and sexuality can't live together. And now they're lovely about all of these issues, and they love my wife. Sometimes I think they like her more than me. And so, that was good, but it doesn't mean that just because your family accepts you, those first years were challenging, because I felt like I always had to prove myself and prove why I deserved to be embraced in the same way that my brothers were embraced. And, it was different than it is now, which is not to say it was as bad as in the 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, but people were still very wary of gayness and queerness in the early 90s. And we were still dealing with the fallout of the Reagan administration, who neglected the gay community in such profound ways, but allowed an entire plague to wipe out a generation of gay men. And so trying to balance all of those things at times, especially, in my late teens and early 20s, was really challenging, because I was 19 when I came out.
Thanks for sharing that.
So coming out for me has been a huge journey. I've come out many times. I came out before I transitioned. I came out as trans, which was definitely the most monumental one for me, the most life-changing. I came out as gay again, and then I most recently came out as pansexual. But coming out as trans for me, where I was 19 years old, was my true identity. I almost felt reborn in a way. And like Roxane, I was so blessed to have my family just totally embrace me. I have 2 brothers. So I was like, you got a sister now, get into it. And they loved it. They totally embraced me. My mom, unfortunately, though, passed away when I was 19. And I never got that mother-daughter relationship. So transitioning with my dad was really the biggest challenge for me, because it wasn't only my transition, it was both of ours. He was relearning me, I was relearning him in ways, and it was a fight. And I think that's the biggest thing for any trans person, is not retreating, not running away, really reteaching your friends, your family, your new name, your new pronouns, and your new life, essentially. And teaching them that it's not a new person, it's just a happier, more positive, different you, but it's the same you, it's the same soul. So that was my biggest challenge. And I feel like that's what I admire most about trans people out there. I'm like, you better work, you better fight, girl or boy.
I have to say that this paradigm that we've been in, or that I at least have been in, and speak for myself, has allotted me the time and space to have those conversations with my parents that I probably would not have had, or maybe I think I found myself in such a vulnerable place for the last year that it gave me permission to have those conversations. And I think it's an interesting thing to come out of this experience, that when I allowed myself to be vulnerable, people returned the favor, or at the very least that ignoring it isn't going to make it better. That these things stay with us, and unless we face them, we don't get to walk through it. We can't pass through it until we face it.
You need to talk about it and talk to people and express how you feel. It's good advice. Roxane, how do you think we can promote better understanding of the fact that we're all different, and encourage empathy and non-judgment?
Well, I think the most important thing is to always treat difference as a source of strength. It's an asset rather than a liability. I think a lot of times people are afraid of anything that's different and that's unfamiliar. And I'm not even into woo, but I see difference as an opportunity to get to know what it means to live in someone else's skin, and the opportunity to just have your understanding of the world expand. As a writer, that's the most exciting thing to me about getting to know other people, other cultures, and other ways of living. We tend to believe that our way is the only way or our way is the best way. And that's not the case. I think that there's room in this world for all kinds of people who live all kinds of lives, and accepting other people for who they are and understanding that who they are is not a choice is really the least that anyone could do to make the world a more humane place.
That's great. And the next question for you, Gigi, is how do you think we can promote better understanding of the fact that we're all different and encourage empathy and non-judgment?
Visibility. Honestly, it really is all about seeing different stories, seeing different faces, different genders, different ethnicities, different religions, all different facets. And that's one of the beautiful things about being online is you get to see everyone's different stories. Like when I started over 10 years ago, there was barely any coming out videos. There wasn't, you know, transgender people that I would watch. But now there is so much diversity. There's so much visibility. People are putting themselves out there in ways that I never really thought possible. And I'm one of those people. So it's all about that. And if you can see it, I truly believe that you can be it. And I feel like that's a quote that I live by a lot. Whenever I see someone different that I've never really, taken in before, I'm like, wow, thank God I saw that today.
That's something I take very seriously as running the biggest magazine in the world, is to tell those stories, because we want to touch people's hearts so we can change their minds, and to have a diverse subjects who are diverse, and so you can be represented and see your story, but also tell your story to other people, to open up and show that everybody is the same. We're all people. We're all going through the same struggles. Wilson, what do you think?
I had a friend who was going through a really rough time and was really being tough on themselves. Some self-judgment, some really harsh self-judgment, because they had done something that they regretted. And I tweeted something, along the lines of that no one should be defined by the worst thing that they've done. Something along those lines, forgiveness. That I think there's, especially online, I feel like there's so many people who are there looking for that gotcha moment, like waiting for you to slip up in some way so that they can call you out for something. And I challenge people to question why they need to do that. And I think in my case, early on, I discovered that this tendency to want to judge people or be harsh with people starts with the way that I speak to myself, right? I don't judge anyone harsher than I judge myself. And so this self-judgment and this judgment of others is very connected. And I think when you humble yourself enough to know that you are human, and you will make mistakes, because that's part of being human. You will allow people that same gesture. You will allow them to be human too, and make mistakes, and forgive them. So I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness.
Thank you. Alec, how do you think we as the society can promote a better understanding of the fact that we're all different, and how do we encourage empathy and non-judgment?
Well, it's interesting. I do have a teenager. My son is 16 years old, and the kids these days do not have any of the sexual shame or baggage that I had in the 80s. There's a completely different culture now. And I even asked my son, do you think it's because you have two dads that you were so kind of open? He goes, no, I would have been that way anyway. Like, it's the predominant culture that's coming out now. But I think if we can promote empathy, that people are different, I think we're heading towards that. I like to think that we're not just living in a bubble. I feel like culturally we are at a crossroads with this country. And we are divided between people who are kind of nostalgic for an America that kind of only existed in their imagination, an America that was good for straight white people, Christians, that kind of like that caste system. If you've read Isabel Wilkerson's amazing book, The Caste System, where straight white men were the dominant caste and the rest of us just kind of like fit in. That is going away. That's an inevitability. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I think we're at that crossroads right now.
I think that we need to spend less of our energy trying to reach across the proverbial aisle, because what we're saying is that we're human beings who deserve to live. And so that's not a point of debate or discussion. That's not like something that we can sit around and sort of find common ground about. Like, we're human. And if you don't believe that, okay, well, that's horrific, but I don't really have anything to say to you. There's nothing I can say to you that's going to make you think I'm a human being.
Alec, do you have any ideas about how to get people to start a conversation about seeking help or encouraging a friend?
And when you see it, you can be it. And that's about creating awareness on all our parts. We can all do that. I have a mental health podcast called Alec Mapa, Hot Mess, with Matthew Dempsey, psychotherapist. I'd love all of you to be on. Wilson's already been on it. Gigi, I'd love to have you on. Roxane, I'd love to have you on. Dan.
Hell yeah.
It's really about taking this stigma out of talking about mental health. And I always, at some point during the show, I said I didn't talk about it for years because I was embarrassed. But now I'm living proof that you can't die of embarrassment. We have to normalize it in our everyday life, that it's not a big deal. It's not this big taboo. It's just getting your head on straight. It's checking in with yourself, checking in that you're all right. Wilson, you're champing at the bit. You got to say something.
Well, I just think it's really important that we talk about that we go to therapy, right? That we take the stigma out of it by talking about it in our conversations with our friends and, in these panels or at any given opportunity we have. It's one of the reasons why I'm really proud of the work that we're doing on Star Trek Discovery, because I play this counselor and we see these people on the show who are supposed to be, saving the world, but we also see them struggling and coming to this doctor for help. And so for Star Trek to take on this issue of mental health and make it and communicate the fact that it's about a holistic view of medicine, right? That medicine isn't just about, getting a Band-Aid or a vaccine or, curing cancer. It's also about your brain and your relationship to yourself, and your mental health is part of your health. And the more we make it just a general, normal thing to do, the better. And I think that's just about having, saying it and having the conversations.
Alec, what does resilience mean to you?
Oh, wow. I know all about that. I mean, Wilson and I have been friends for almost 30 years. We're out openly. Yeah, we're like, and for the whole time, we've been openly queer actors of color in Los Angeles, working in TV and film. So we have had our up times, we have had our down times, and resilience is about just keep getting up. We just keep getting up. And I think that Wilson and I both have a sense of, I belong here. Even if I'm not working right now, or if nobody is listening to me, I belong here, and my presence is significant. And we've managed to manifest careers that match that inner belief. And I think that's what resilience is about. It's kind of like, knowing that what you have to say is important, and there will be a platform at some point for you to express yourself.
Thanks. It's really inspiring. Gigi, many of our teens are looking for activity, events, and ideas that they can implement on their high school campuses for Pride Month and in support of mental health. Do you have any ideas of how people should celebrate that?
I mean, as big as you can go. Last year, Pride was canceled, as they said, which I hate. It makes me cringe because I know how I look forward to it. I know how much, importance it holds in a lot of people's hearts. So I feel anything that you can do, and get the allies involved too. It's not just for people within our community. It's literally for everyone. And sometimes the allies hold the most weight.
I love your creativity. That's great. I also wanted to talk to you about the recent legislation proposed across the country with healthcare. How do you feel that impacts you and the LGBTQIA community?
It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 4 steps back. And it made me really hopeful for the future. Looking back 10 years on my life, I didn't have role models. We've gone so far in the time that I've been within the community, out and loud. So these little hiccups, these horrible things going on, I know they will pass, because the positivity always outweighs the negativity in the end.
You said there that the positivity and the hope are coming from young people. I think that's so true. The energy and the activism you see in the last 5 years has really brought some light in from the darkness. Roxane, where do you turn to for hope?
Hope is important, and I think that we always need to be forward looking. But I struggle with hope. And so instead I look for like possibility and things that I can do to make things happen. But the thing that's giving me hope these days is something we were sort of talking about earlier, which is this younger generation. They are so free. It blows my mind every single day when I look at these kids on TikTok and YouTube. And, unfortunately, once you pass 40, you sort of become an elder in the LGBTQ community for so many reasons, because so many of us just didn't make it. We didn't survive. And so as I look back at, every day it thrills me. I just am so thrilled. They're like pansexual and a lot of other sexuals. And I learn more and more every day. And I'm just like, these are gifts that we are like allowed to live freely and to express our sexualities, in these thrilling ways. And they are so confident. I can't even imagine it. My God, it's just so awesome.
These young people, they do give you hope, but they're like walking, talking reminders of how we could live our lives, right? They're like what I was saying earlier about the things that we've accepted, and they like walk around going, well, you don't have to do it. Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Part of my job is to listen and be led as well, right? To let them lead us to this new place, right? And to allow them to call me on the shit that I allow that's keeping us back. Because even I, right, am stuck in my own old habits, and they seem to challenge that. And I'm grateful for that.
I think as queer people, we drift towards our found families, and now, we have technology. They can go onto the TikToks or the Instagrams and realize that they're not alone. I've had a front row seat to this whole shit show for a really long time. And the pendulum always goes back and forth, to the left, to the right, to the left. And that's how progress happens. When I was growing up in San Francisco, they were trying to legislate against gay and lesbian teachers teaching in the school system. They were voting against that. They were voting against it in Florida. And what that did was, every time they present a prejudice, it opens up the conversation. Okay, you want to talk about gay teachers? All of a sudden, all these gay teachers came out and said, I've been teaching your kids. I'm their history teacher. I'm their kindergarten teacher. And then what does it become next? It becomes about gays in the military. And all of a sudden everybody goes, I'm gay. I've served in the military. I'm lesbian. I'm trans. I'm a vet. And now they always try to scare us with something. They always try to scare people into voting, into mobilizing that as an issue. Right now, the latest people that they're trying to scare people is with trans. But what that has done, it has opened up the conversation to all these trans youth going, hello. And not only just the trans youth, the parents of trans youth who are saying, my child is not a menace. my child is not somebody you should be afraid of. And so what happens is those conversations spread, and all of a sudden, the more commonplace they become, the more commonplace this entire panel becomes as a presence in American lives, we become less frightening. You can't use us as a wedge issue to threaten people anymore. But I do believe that as we progress, it'll always swing back and forth.
You would have thought they had learned a lesson with these defensive marriage acts that they tried to pass during the 2004 presidential election. I see these trans youth in sports laws in very similar ways, right? It's a last gasp of this opposition. It's their last gasp opportunity to try and kill the subject matter altogether, and it always backfires on them every single time. And it may not happen right away. Like, those laws passed, those defensive marriage acts passed, let's be honest, but they did not last long. They actually fueled the energy that we needed in order to make marriage equality possible. So they end up backfiring every single time.
I'm going to go back to that question for Gigi. How do you find community support if your family wasn't supportive? I don't know. And have you got a chosen family, and is having a chosen family important to you?
Personally, for me, I think chosen family is essential. It is something that you genuinely, I feel, need within the community. There is your family. I mean, my family's from Toronto, Canada, hence the dress, this little Canada dress. But I'm in LA, so I have no family here. So my chosen family is my family here. And I feel for the most part, we do drift, like Alec said. It's such a good way, it's such an articulate way to put it, because we really do just gravitate towards the people that get us. And sometimes it's not your family. Sometimes it's both. And I'd like to also talk about or mention what he said about the trans people sports conversation that's going on right now. I used to be a competitive diver, and I was on my way to the Olympics. And I would be damned if I couldn't compete because I'm trans. If I was still diving to this day, I would be damned. And I'm so happy that it's being talked about now, because it is something that really, really irks me.
Roxane, do you have any views on chosen families?
Absolutely. Without a chosen family, I would not be here. Particularly during my late teens and 20s, I relied on my chosen family, and it was the older lesbians in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I'm from Nebraska, where I lived during that decade, who showed me, how to be a young queer woman in the world and what to do when the girl breaks your heart and starts dating your best friend and things like that. And now, as an older person, as an adult, it's awesome that I still have a chosen family, like the people that are here for me, that I turn to, especially as a writer. My community are the people. We all started out together about 15 years ago, and we were there when nobody was buying our work or understanding what the fuck we were writing about. It's the people that came up with me, and I absolutely do consider them family. And I agree with what Alex said. We drift and we find each other, and it's just a really lucky thing. I think it's not the one good thing, but I think it's the one thing that we can generally count on, is that we will find our people.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, how that happens, but I think it's like if your mental health, if your survival depends on finding a group of friends who think and look like you and will listen to your problems, you will find them.
Now, at least when you are feeling alone and when you are in a fragile place emotionally, the internet will at least point you in the right direction, if there is no right direction where you live, in perhaps a rural place or in a restrictive religious community.
I really just wanted to say that anybody watching this who is going through a hard time or figuring out themselves, there is no rush. I was so eager to get to the end of my transition, at the end of my journey. I just thought, this is the end goal and this is going to be it. I just think it's so important to enjoy the process of your journey. And if you want to transition, don't think you have to do it in 2 seconds. Really grow into it and realize how beautiful it is. So you're doing great, is what I want to say.
I think I just wanted to add one little thing. Earlier, you asked about resilience, and Alec gave this really beautiful answer about, it's about getting back up, and I completely agree with that. I just want to add that resilience is also about how you grow when you get back up, right? It's about the lessons you learn when you fall, because developmentally as babies, we learn to walk by falling. We develop muscles by falling in order to learn how to get up and walk. And so those moments where you feel like you've fallen down is really an opportunity to grow, learn something, so that when you face that dilemma again, you don't repeat that same mistake, that we grow every time we fall. And I have been a faller for 47 years, so I'm talking from experience.
So true. Roxane, anything else you want to add?
The only thing I would add is that we place a lot of, we love to prioritize resilience and grit. And I think that can sometimes put a lot of pressure on a person. It's okay if you're feeling weak. It's okay if you can't get through it and you know that you need help, and that, it's going to be kind of messy, because I think a lot of us were resilient because we didn't think we had a choice, but you do have a choice sometimes. And it's okay if you can't just sort of grit your way through it and you need some support along the way.
Roxane said it perfectly. It's this thing of like this journey of being a human being. My podcast is called Alec Mapa Hot Mess with Matthew Dempsey, psychotherapist.
I listened to it this morning.
Oh, thank you. And it's kind of like mental health. When you decide to get better, when you decide to be a better human being, that means facing issues that you might not want to look at. When you're building a house and your house is being fixed up, you have to look at the foundation of things. What's in there? Are there rats in the basement? Is it a leaky foundation? What do you need to shore up in order to make your entire structure stronger? And you have, and facing your issues, facing your demons, facing the things you're afraid of requires bravery. It requires the bravery to be vulnerable, the bravery to ask for help, like Roxane says. But you have to also start with the foundation that you're worth it. If you're struggling and you feel sad, it's okay for you to get help, because you're worth it. You're worth being taken care of. You're worth being cared about. You as a human being, your value as a person exists in your very fact of being alive. That's my favorite line from Color Purple. I may be ugly, I may be black, I may be a woman, but I'm here. Each and every one of us is significant.
Well, I'd like to thank each of you for being here today and for sharing your stories and your experience and your wisdom, because I think it really does go a long way. And I'd like to thank Bring Change to Mind and Glenn Close for all of the amazing work that they've been doing, working to end the stigma and discrimination surrounding mental illness. So this has been a really great discussion that hopefully has contributed to that. So thank you, folks.
Hi, I'm Zach Williams, and thank you for joining us. I'm a board member of Bring Change to Mind and a mental health advocate. I came to this work after I lost my father. I really struggled with his death. It is so important to talk about mental health and to end stigma. I encourage you to join us in having open and honest conversations about mental health. It can be simple. Ask a family member, friend, or neighbor how they are doing. Listen without judgment. Share your own story and be vulnerable. Everyone can be a part of this movement of change. Let's talk about mental health and save lives. Visit bringchangetomind.org to get involved. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in to Conversations with Bring Change to Mind on such an important topic. I'm Dan Wakeford, the Editor-in-Chief of People. Almost all of us know or love someone affected by mental illness or have dealt with it ourselves. Bring Change to Mind and People's Let's Talk About It initiative, which I launched in October 2019, is the perfect partnership because we share a common goal: to destigmatize this sensitive topic, to provide resources about where to get help, and to offer support to help anyone in need. I believe in the power of storytelling, touching people's hearts and opening their minds. I wanted to shape our campaign around stories from regular folks as well as celebrities who have dealt with mental illness. People's Alliance with the Crisis text line has also helped hundreds in their time of need. If you or someone you know need mental health help, text STRENGTH to the Crisis text line at 741 741 to be connected to a certified crisis counsellor. Just talking about how you feel helps. In other words, saying, let's talk about it, can be a powerful first step to healing.